Hello and welcome back. If you skipped the first two podcasts and this is your first time listening, hello. You can go back and listen to part 1, People and Animals, and part 2, Safe and Sound, but you don't need to, but you might want to after this. I don't know, I'll leave that to you. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen today. This is the third of 3 podcasts of a project called You, Me, the World and Poplar. My name is Nick, and I am from Take Stock Exchange. I'm going to tell you 3 stories now about when we met 3 groups of people in Poplar remotely. You comfortable? Okay. Here we go. Oh, before we get going, I have a question for you. What do you love so much it hurts? Like before, feel free to answer this out loud. Maybe you're sitting with someone, have a chat, or just answer it in your head. Part 3. Love and Livability. I've lived in different parts of London and I think the sense of community here is bigger and stronger. These words are being spoken by a woman who wears a dark orange spotted blouse and has an impeccable white headscarf. She passionately says, "That's not to say the other parts of London don't have strong communities. It's just to say I have felt most connected here. When I first started this job, I felt straight away that I belonged to this community and locality. The people were always welcoming. Now, that might be because of the higher concentration of my ethnic group, my religious group, or whatever it is. But even when we're speaking about poverty levels, there's a wider support network. There's a sense of happiness, despite not having the material things that are supposed to make you happy." It's 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday, the 14th of October. We are speaking to 5 women on Zoom. Each of these women is a manager of a community centre in Poplar. Each sit facing the camera and they all have various backgrounds behind them. We can see some of them at work. One of them has a mask hanging around her chin with shelves full of files and equipment, and you can see that others are doing the call from home. The woman who began the discussion spoke calmly and made her point swiftly. In Tower Hamlets particularly, the poverty rate is alarmingly high. I know the statistics, 57% of children and 40% of adults here are living in poverty. But 80% of people think their quality of life is really good. We ask the question, why do you think that is? Why the disparity between actual circumstances and the way they're perceived? I think it's to do with family. People here live with their extended families, came the reply. The conversation goes from poverty in families to the wider community of Poplar, the strengths and weaknesses of Poplar, and what these women are trying to do to make it better. I guess there's the philosophical standpoint of thinking. If you don't experience the greater things in life, you're going to be more happy with what you've got. This comes from the woman in the dark spotted blouse and the headscarf. Her voice is now getting faster and her face gets slightly bigger as she moves closer to the screen. If you don't know what you're missing out on, you're going to be happy with what you've got. And I know that's a really bad way of looking at things, but I guess that's why we're in our roles as well. We're supposed to be injecting those things back into people's lives as well. But if you were to sum up our jobs, it's about helping create the bigger sense of community cohesion, and if people are in trouble, finding help. We ask the question, is there a strong community in Poplar? One of the women, who has a brown bob of hair, wears a t-shirt with a really loud coloured logo on it. She twirls a bright pink fluffy flamingo pen between her fingers, then jumps in. She speaks as if she's always making a point. COVID's a really good example because the centre became a food bank really quickly. And then all these volunteers came forward, and it was people who have lived in the area, but their bubble has never brought them to the community centre, has never made them think about the kind of people that we work with, the more vulnerable people. And suddenly, even though they were going through their own shit, they were still coming to help and support. She keeps her eyes fixed on the flamingo pen as she speaks, never looking at the rest of us down the camera. And yes, we're all really different, and it can be really challenging, but ultimately we're all connected, and when shit hits the fan, we do come together and we do look out for one another. The woman with the mask around her chin and the long blonde hair resting on her shoulders adds quietly, "With the COVID situation, I was amazed at how quickly people was offering food from their own cupboards to give to their neighbours who didn't have anything. That was so magnificent to be part of. And for me, that reflects, we've got nothing in this area. But what little we have got, we're happy to share, to look after each other." That was really inspirational. One of the priorities on my patch is how do we invite the people who are newer to the area into the community, says the woman with the orange spotted blouse. COVID-19 lockdown, we saw a mixing. We had a lot of professional volunteers who work in Canary Wharf, in the schools, in the city. They made a lot of friends, I think some of them have made lifelong friends, and it's those opportunities these days that we're lacking. How do we bring these two groups together to merge together and learn about one another? We ask, and COVID created those circumstances? Yes, which is an unfortunate way of making it happen, but it did make it happen. The conversation continues. We talk about architecture, buildings, pour doors, Balfron Tower, gentrification, social media, the consequences of instant gratification, and the difficulty of working with communities on ground level, feeling disconnected from the people at the top. The woman with the brown bob of hair says, "Even when working for a community-minded organisation, as we all do, there's pressure around profit. Making money is part of social housing and how decisions are made. People are missing out, and people are being pushed out. So it's a tricky landscape to operate in, especially when you've got a big mouth like me. We are here still trying to make sure people have the same opportunities and are heard." Conversation goes on and on. They talk about immigrant communities, pigeonholing people, ESOL classes not going up to a high enough level, low expectations, young people leaving the area, gardening. At times it gets quite heated. Is it a disgrace that poverty is as pervasive as it is in the UK today? Or are our expectations too high? After 90 minutes, we're able to squeeze in one final question. Will the future be better than the present? There's a rare moment of silence. Still staring away from the camera, eyes still fixed on this bright pink flamingo pen she's twiddling, loud t-shirt on, she cautiously begins to speak. I mean, it's a massive question, isn't it? I'm going to have to use the P word. It's all political. There is so much messed up right now. A lot of what has happened, and you thought there were glimmers of hope, how people were being seen, key workers, people that have come to this country, that have worked here, jobs that were keeping us going, nurses, carers, things like that, were being recognised and seen, and people were looking out for one another. But at the same time, you've got cuts, constant cuts. Our youth services have been cut. Send support money being cut. We're being divided more than ever. So for people like us in our jobs, trying to bring people together right now, it's hard. And when times get hard, that's what people do. They cause division amongst us so they can carry on. It's happening. I was having a conversation just last week with one of our preschool mums who was born and bred in the area. We have spoken loads about her arguing with her dad and his attitude of foreigners coming over, and that's why it's shit. She is always fighting with him about that. And she said to me last week, and it literally floored me, well, maybe my dad had a point. Oh my God. No, no, no. We can't let this happen. We are in a community setting. We are positive people. We do see really good things happen every day on a small scale, on a small level. That's why we focus on that community level, where things are positive a lot of the time. Good people doing good things, and that makes you feel motivated that things can be better. It's a very deep question. It's a tough one. Okay, good evening all, welcome. Hope you're all sitting somewhere comfortable. We've had one apology, but there should be another apology. Who's that from? Sorry? We haven't got a corporate management person. Oh, blimey, sorry, yeah, he's on holiday. Okay. Can we ask if he's actually committed to this group? He definitely is, and he sends his sincere apologies. We'll have to work out so he's not on holiday next time. No, it doesn't work like that. He has to fit in with us, not us fit in with him. Right, okay. So if he could make an effort, we only do these 4 times a year, so we're not asking him to. And if he can't attend, he should really be sending someone else. It's 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday the 20th of October. We're on Zoom again. 16 people on this call in total. It's a JEP, that's a Joint Estate Panel meeting. All but a few of the people on the call are resident representatives from the 10 different Poplar Harker estate boards. Some are older, some younger, men, women, a mixture of ethnicities, and there's also a couple of men there representing Poplar Harker. The chairperson of this committee is a middle-aged woman with an East London accent that rings like a Bow bell, continues making her point to the 2 representatives from Harker. When we started it, it was stated he would be part of this, and when we look back at his record, it ain't been that great. I'll take that back. You all probably think she's whinging. Well, you know, that's your job, says one of the residents. What? To whinge? No, to hold them to account. A few smiles, a few chuckles, and the business of the meeting gets underway. On the agenda today is parking. People will know that the bane of my heart is parking, says the chairperson. I hate parking. I'm not a car owner. I don't drive. I can drive you all up the wall, but I don't drive a car. The floor is now open to residents, each of them taking their turn to describe the issues on the different estates around Poplar. There's confusion over parking permits going digital, people flouting the rules, parking wherever they want because they know they won't get fined, visitor bays being used incorrectly, and abandoned vehicles. One of the representatives from Harker, a younger man, well presented, neat hair, tortoiseshell glasses, speaks calmly with an accent that might be from Essex, or it might as well be from East London. He introduces himself. Hopefully you all know me already. Part of my responsibilities is parking. Sorry to not sound more enthusiastic. There is a couple of chortles. He explains the challenges that Harker has faced when it comes to parking. Namely, they don't have a dedicated parking team, and the company that used to enforce the parking on the estate has pulled out of their contract. We have explained to the residents that they're paying for the bay itself, not the enforcement of it, and, as it stands, a lot of the bigger parking enforcement providers aren't seeing social housing as a way of making money. People don't have the money to pay the fines, and it puts us in a very difficult position. Because if we can't source an enforcement contract to go out and supply the tickets, we've got to work with what we've got. He explains that the current policy is to ask residents to photograph any parking violations they have and send them in via email. And in my opinion, parking is less of a priority than other things we have got going on. And so we go around the residents again. They say parking might not be a priority, but this is making life much harder for the vulnerable residents. If you can't park in your bay, the buildings are much harder to access. One of them says, if you come home with your shopping, or your kids, or your elderly, or you have an elderly relative, and you can't park in your bay, you need a solution now. Especially when you're paying quite a lot of money compared to what you pay for street parking. Another. And then comes the issue of paying the money for the bays. But people were paying for a service, and now they're not getting that service, but they're still being charged. They want to know, where is the money going? And the representative responds, I do understand the frustration, and I'm not trying to suggest it isn't as bad for you as the picture you're painting. Where is the money going? What is that for? It's for the rental of the bay, and the money is paying to rent the space, not the enforcement of it. I know it isn't a perfect system, and I know there is frustration, but if you send the information through, we will process it, and if we're able to, it's not that parking isn't a priority, it's just there are other priorities. As somebody who doesn't own a car and can only drive people up the wall, I've got a question. You say the cost is for renting the space. If residents are paying for the space, what are you doing with the money? You're not providing a service, obviously. Well, I beg to differ on that point. The money that people are paying for is renting the bay, the work we do around it. But you're not. That's what these people are saying. You're not. This is not personal to you as a person. I'm challenging what you're saying. As an outsider, as I've said, I don't drive. As an outsider, it's bullshit. Okay. If I'm paying for a parking space and nobody's monitoring it, nobody's stopping someone else from parking in it, what are you doing with my money? It's only if people report violations we can do anything. I think we're on a bloody merry-go-round, and somebody needs to put their foot on the ground and say stop and make a decision as to where this is going. I'm not getting at you, I'm getting at the role. And so the discussion goes on, back and forth, between the residents, who are themselves representatives of other groups of residents, and the men representing Poplar Harker. I understand your concerns. I'm really not trying to fob you off. We are trying to do as much as we can with the resources we've got, and I will take back the collective feeling and the points you've raised tonight to those above me. A report back to this group at the next meeting, please. That gives you a quarter of a year to come up with something. I can't give any guarantees. No, but something. OK. Fair enough. Thank you. The representative says goodbye. I'll excuse myself and put the kids to bed. Thank you. Nice to meet you all. Each of the residents warmly wishes him goodbye. He smiles back, and the chairperson thanked him for coming before saying to us, I'm so sorry you've been banded onto a parking agenda. You've been very patient. Could you tell everyone what you're doing here? We explain the project, but there's not much time to ask any questions. We do manage to ask people to vote. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or in the middle. Is Poplar a great place to be? everyone puts their thumbs up. It's quite a complicated place to be. Our baby was born on the 7th of January. I was going bonkers when I had a child. Very difficult. Incredibly isolating. It's just such a change to your identity. And one of the things I started doing was going to the children's centre. The one at Crisp Street is amazing. It was a place I found I could be a mother, which is what I had become. She turns her computer round to show everyone else her son. We see a little boy using a coffee table to hold himself up, his head turned, mouth open, his wide eyes gazing back at us. I might have to pop off in a bit and put him to sleep. Her voice is energetic. As she speaks, her little boy whoops and wails in the background. It's Thursday, the 12th of November, 7:15 p.m. in the evening. It's our last workshop of the project. 4 women's faces looking back at us in the little boxes on our screens. There are many aspects to the place you live. There are good things, amazing things, but this woman, light long greyish hair swooping over her shoulders, she wears big thick glasses and speaks energetically. Her voice is high-pitched and her staccato sentences bounce from one topic to the next before she arrives at making a point. But there is no high street here. There are no shops. We did have 2 high streets. We had in Poplar High Street and we had Devon's Road. Both have been evacuated. We are full of flats. We are full of flats to the extent we are like a caged rat community, and it's getting worse and worse. The third woman, whose face we can only see the top half of, brings a more mellow energy. She cradles the side of her face in her hand. She speaks smoothly in her London accent, making each of the words she says roll into the next. I had to ask myself, if I had a choice to live anywhere, would I choose here? No. There are some good things. I'm part of a housing co-op, and that's great. As a single person, it's difficult to have a home by yourself, so I feel lucky to have a flat. But, there is something about East London and Poplar that is special, sparks something. I feel prouder of being an East Londoner. The final woman speaks incredibly softly, a very slight Chinese accent, her words delivered calmly and meditatively. I hang out at Bartlett Park, watching people in the park. In that area, people naturally talk to each other quite a lot, and I see people from all ethnic backgrounds socialising with each other too, which I don't really see much yet elsewhere. But I'm still new to London. I just, says the woman with the long greyish hair. I feel disconnected from communities and stuff like that. This is the first time I've lived in a flat. I've lived here 15 years and I don't know my neighbours. And I have never, ever lived anywhere before where I don't know my neighbours. It's such a transient community, like such a young community. Not being youngest, the average age seems to be in the 30s, and I've never lived anywhere where everything I got involved in, everywhere I go, I'm probably the oldest person there. And it seems to be people generally working in the city or in Canary Wharf, and it's very much like a dormitory existence. They sleep in their flats, but there seems to be a lack of commitment in the way I understand community. I grew up with community. Here it's just like there's a very kind of white middle class professional, I have nothing against people like that, but that sense of community, it's lacking. But maybe it's because of me, not because of them. The smoothly spoken woman responds, I always saw community as not valued as much in the West. That's been a perception of mine. It's not there as a value that's appreciated. In other parts of the world, community is top and other things work around it. And the very softly spoken woman adds, I believe in the power of urban design and architecture and its impact. I lived in Hong Kong for 10 years, for the first 5 years in a high-rise on the 25th floor. And for the 5 years I didn't see neighbours. I knew they were there, I knew there were people next to me. Then I moved to a rural village in another part of Hong Kong. Within a week I was saying hello to everyone in the street. There is something about apartment buildings that prevent social interactions. I think it's also a sign of the times. I've encountered and been part of communities in Poplar, but in a much more transient way, says the new mum, her eyes darting, looking away from us and to the different parts of the room around her. So at the children's centre, for example, I went to do some kind of mental health support sessions. That was a little piece of community. But then you don't get to stay in touch. You meet these people, you have a connection, you share some intense thoughts, but then it goes. I know those communities are out there, but I was one of those 30-somethings whizzing off to my job elsewhere. She leaves to put her baby to bed. OK, we say, thank you everyone. Thank you for taking the time to share what you've had to say and to listen to one another. There's one final thing we'd like to ask everyone to do. Could each person say one thing that they're going to take away from this conversation and the things that you've said and the things you've heard today? That one thing might be a feeling, or it might be something that someone has said, or a new thought you've had, or an old thought that has been reconfirmed. The woman with the long greyish hair, speaking more slowly than she has done before, takes a moment. I think what I'm going to take away from this discussion, Poplar is a bit like an onion. It has so many different layers to it. So I feel quite positive, actually, from talking to everybody tonight. Everyone has got their own micro-community within it. That's given me hope. Because often I think, oh my God. People are very resilient. The East Enders that have lived here for generations are very strong and resilient. We are strong. We will succeed. It's not just what's being done to us. It's what we're doing to impact on society and the community as well. The mum returns, just in time to share her final thoughts. I really have a painful love of this part of London. I'm from Yorkshire, and I used to think I wanted to go back, but I don't. I want to stay here. I want to live here forever. I love it. But it's a very complicated place to live, and it's quite a scary place to bring up our baby in a way. I think what I'll take away is, I like the idea that our communities are like networks, like we've come together here to create this micro-community and have really fascinating conversations. And we've really connected in a way that is lovely and meaningful. It's about just valuing these little connections and understanding how important they can be to other people and yourself as well. And that's the 3 stories. Thank you very much for listening to Part 3, Love and Livability. You can go back and listen to Part 1 and 2 if you like. You can also check out our website, takestockexchange.co.uk. And everyone, remember, look after yourselves and each other. Lots of love. My name's been Nick Kassenbaum. Speak to you soon. You, Me, the World and Poplar was a project delivered by Take Stock Exchange and Poplar Union. You can join the conversation by going to takestockexchange.co.uk, where you can leave your comments, thoughts and feedback, or simply answer this question. What will you take away from this episode? I look forward to seeing what you have to say. We'd like to thank all of the participants and groups that took part in this project. We usually meet in person, but at this difficult time we made it happen remotely. Funding for this project came from Arts Council England, Poplar Harker and Poplar Union. The project was conceived and delivered by Take Stock Exchange, Nick Kassenbaum, Eleanor Clack, Ollie Hawes and Anna Smith. Music and sound was by Anna Lowenstein, and the audio was mixed by Naomi Jackson. We've got some big thank yous to Isabel Coutinho, Moena Johnson, Beth Watton, Babu Batashaji, John Geeson, Ted Maxwell, Mary Osborne, Cheryl Gallagher, Mandy Phil and Bertie Casson, Poplar Harker and Poplar Union. And again, we'd like to thank the participants of the workshops, the organisers of each group we worked with, and the community of Poplar. You can find out more about our work at takestockexchange.co.uk, or feel free to get in touch at hello@takestockexchange.co.uk. Thank you very much for listening.